Let me introduce the awesome culinary instructors we have with us this evening. Vicki Brett Gak is a writer, blogger, master certified vegan lifestyle coach, whole food plant-based culinary instructor, and certified personal chef. Trained in nutrition for a healthy heart, in a dietary therapy for reversing common diseases. She is also Forks Over Knives plant-based certified and holds certificates in plant-based nutrition and in wellness counseling. Connect with Vicki through her Ann Arbor Vegan Kitchen blog at annarborvegankitchen.com. And if you want to check that out, she has lots of great recipes. So I'm also going to add that link to the chat. And Michele Gallo is a certified health and wellness coach, certified plant-based professional, ACSM certified exercise physiologist, and whole food plant-based culinary instructor. She holds certificates in culinary coaching from Harvard Medical School and the Institute for Lifestyle Medicine, ACLM Lifestyle Medicine for Coaches, T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies in Plant-Based Nutrition, and is Forks Over Knives plant-based certified. She is also a conference coordinator for plant-based prevention of disease. And tonight, Vicki and Michele will be demoing 2 recipes each so follow along if you want, or just sit back and drool over the delicious food they are about to make.
I am so excited to be with all of you tonight. Michele and I are both really excited about the recipes we're making with you. And tonight I'm going to start with what I call a creamy butternut squash soup. Lots of times butternut squash soups are a little bit on the sweeter side. This is a more savory version, and it's really super easy. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make this. You'll notice when you get a chance to take a peek at the recipes, I'm showing you how to make it on the stove as well as in an electric pressure cooker. And they both come out really well and very nice and easy. I'm kind of showing you both ways tonight. So starting with the pressure cooker version. So I've got a pot here that we'll be putting it into for our electric pressure cooker, which is the same as what you may be calling an Instant Pot. I use a different brand, but same basic idea. And this method allows us to put everything all into the pot at once. And I love that because it's so simple and no babysitting is required. So I'm going to start with 3.5 cups of broth. So in my pressure cooker, this is a quart. So I'm just going to basically put almost the whole thing. I'm going to measure 3.5 cups. And we'll put that into the base, and then I'll add everything on top. I'm using a vegetable broth that has no oil and no salt or sugar added. That's actually not true. It does have salt, no sugar, no oil. And you can use any vegetable broth you like. I just like this kind, or the kind that I get from Trader Joe's. Those 2 are my favorite brands. This one's made by Pacific. And to that now, I'm just going to basically put all of my ingredients into this pot. So my next thing we're doing is the onion. I have 1 big Vidalia onion, 1 large onion that I have diced up. I'm just going to add that to the pot. And then 2 cloves of minced garlic. And I'm not a huge garlic fan. Lots of people love the flavor of garlic. They can't get enough. I'm not one of those people that will put 8 cloves of garlic in something. 2 is actually kind of a lot for me, but this recipe can really stand it. It really can, it holds, it kind of needs that flavor because the squash that we're going to be using in here doesn't have a lot of flavor on its own. And so this starts to add a little bit of that savory to it. So we've got the onion, the garlic, and now I'm going to put in 6 cups of cut up butternut squash. I had 1 large, a large to medium sized butternut squash that I cut up yesterday. I peeled it, took off the ends, scooped out the seeds, and prepared it into these approximately 1-inch cubes, maybe 3/4 inch cubes. And so I've got what turns out to be about 6 cups. About a 2-pound squash will yield about this amount. And if you have extra, you can just use it for another purpose. After you cut it up, you can roast it or just save it for a different time. I will say that normally, now today, I actually cut this myself, but when I get the opportunity, I usually buy this already chopped up because it is a little hard on the wrists Michele will talk to you more about that idea too. But both of us like to take some shortcuts when we can, when something like this, you know, the squash it's just a little more effortful to slice it all up. And so if you can find it already cut, it does maybe cost $1 or so more, depending on where you're buying it. But for me, it's worth it, just the time savings and just the ease on my wrist. So I like to do that. Next, I'm taking another shortcut. It's a frozen vegetable. I'm using frozen organic corn. And my recipe says about 10 ounces. This is a 12-ounce package, close enough. 8, 10, 12, all fine. I always use, when I'm getting corn, I always buy organic. So this is organic. And I'm pouring this frozen corn just right on top of that squash and onions. And the next thing I'm adding is going to be some beans. I've got a can of navy beans that I have rinsed and drained. And I'm just going to add a can of white beans. It could really be any kind of bean. I've made this only with white beans. So, you know, it could be navy beans, pinto beans, any kind of light bean. And that's really only to keep the color in that same butternut squash range. But you could certainly, if that wasn't important to you, you could add a different color bean, a kidney bean, a black bean, something like that. The flavor would be very interesting, and you could certainly kind of mix it up with different choices. And now on top of that, so you see a lot of conveniences here, the frozen corn, a can of beans, some broth, really just the only things that we're cutting up involve the garlic, onion, and butternut squash. I'm adding a little seasoning. I've got some salt, pepper, and just a dash of a Creole seasoning, which is just salt, pepper, and a chili pepper and a little garlic. So I'm just adding that. You wouldn't have to. You could use something else. You could add a little curry. You could add anything you like. And that is it. So now I'm going to give it a little stir. Oops, sorry. We're going to give that a little stir, and we're really ready to go. It looks like this. And we're all set to put this into the pressure cooker. I'm going to show you what it looks like fast forward, but I'm going to put this on, add my lid, make sure that it's at high pressure, and set this for about 10 minutes. Okay. And then, you know, it takes a few minutes for it to get up to pressure. It's going to take 10 minutes to count down. And then once it is all set and it's down to 0, you can actually do a quick release of the pressure, and it's ready to go. Now, one thing I didn't show you that, in fact, I'm going to undo this just to show you what I'm going to do. I thought of this today. I don't normally add this. It's not part of the recipe, but I thought it'd be fun to do it because I've got this on hand. I happen to have a lot of extra peppers. It's such a seasonal vegetable. And so you're seeing lots of fresh peppers in the store or at the farmer's market right now. And so I just stuck a pepper into a couple of them today, into my oven to roast them for 30 minutes at 350. So I've got this beautiful roasted pepper, and I'm just going to put it right on top. You wouldn't need to do it. It's not part of the recipe. It adds a little bit of extra depth to the flavor. And I did that with the one that I'm going to show you in a second. So we may as well do it to this one as well. Now you can actually add a jalapeno, again, switch up the beans. You can do anything you like because this is really a very flexible palette. But so just for fun, I thought we'd add a pepper. The next thing I want to show you is what this looks like once it's all done. And so I have one that I prepared on the stove, which is the opposite, or the other, not the opposite, the other method I was mentioning. And so let me just pull that over here. So I cooked this on the stove, the same ingredients. The only difference is that it's got 4 cups, so a full quart of the broth instead of the 3.5 that I put in the pressure cooker. A little less liquid goes into the pressure cooker because it keeps all that steam right within. So this is what it looks like before we take it one step further, and that's to blend it. So it's all, I'm going to just walk right up to the camera just to show that it looks just like this. I put a yellow pepper roasted on top. And now to finish it, we're going to take an immersion blender, which is just a stick blender like this, and blend it to get a little creamier texture. If you don't have this tool, you can certainly put it into a regular blender. And of course, all the ingredients are cooked. You don't really need to blend it, but I just like it, the texture better when we do. So I'm going to make a little noise here and just blend it. You can blend this for exactly as long as you like to have a texture that's a little bit chunky and a little bit creamy. I'm going to do just one more round. Now I put this on to cook just before our class, maybe about an hour ahead, just so it would be all ready to make sure. And the only difference, as I mentioned, in terms of the ingredients is that it has slightly more broth, just an extra half a cup. But in terms of the method, I do put the onion in first rather than the broth and layer everything all at once. I do saute the onion for a few minutes in the pan. I just did that in a little broth. You could do it in a little water, oil if you use oil, whatever you like. And I just, sauteed it. And then I added the garlic for just a minute, just till I could smell the fragrance of the garlic. Then I piled everything in on top. So that's the rest of the ingredients, which are the butternut squash, corn and beans, and a little seasoning, and cooked it. So what that meant was I brought it up to a boil. Once it was boiling, I reduced it to a simmer, covered it, and let it cook for 20 minutes. That was it, just till the squash is tender to the fork. And then I blended it. And so now we've got this nice creamy soup, and I'm just going to plate this so you can see what it looks like. And it cooks so fast, it's really weeknight friendly. It's really nice and rich and delicious. So we'll put one more bowl here. I'll show you in a second what it looks like. And then you can garnish if you want to with a little bit of fresh herbs. And I have some cilantro here. Let's make sure we can see this. I love cilantro. I know that people have a love-hate relationship with cilantro. But here we are, two beautiful bowls of soup, and it makes a nice big pot of this. And I have served this to people who are vegan and non-vegan at family parties, and everyone usually asks for more. So it's really delicious and really easy. Michele?
That looks delicious, Vicki. I wish I could try it. So I'm making a fall dish. It's got Brussels sprouts, kabocha squash, pomegranate, pecans, quinoa. And I just want to tell you a little bit, like you can use any kind of squash, like Vicki was saying, risks get a little bit sore. You might want to buy one that's already cut. Kabocha squash does not usually come in the diced in the fresh section. So what I have found is either, you can use, they make a frozen version. I'll just tell you that what it looks like on the bag is not what it looks like in the bag. They're a lot smaller and not so uniform, like that. You can see a rather big difference. But kabocha squash, if you haven't tried it, it's really good. It's a Japanese squash. It's kind of got a chestnutty taste, a little bit between pumpkin and sweet potato. It's kind of a honey nut. It's a really nice flavor. So I like that. If you haven't tried it, it's nice to try something different. I just want to tell you a little bit about what it looks like. So that's one whole. Now, squash is really difficult to cut, so I just would want you to be careful if you're using that. I'm a big proponent of the cut glove. So what you would do is you cut off the stem end, you cut off the other end so you have a flat surface, and then you cut it in, like this is cut into half here, and then scoop out the seeds and peel it. So you end up with this. Now, because my wrist is a little unhappy these days, I use the frozen, but I just wanted you to see what that's like. And I roasted it. It says 375 on here, but I want to go over that a little bit. You can roast at all different temperatures. You can see if you look up how to bake a potato, you'll probably see 5 or 6 different temperatures for it. And what roasting is a dry heat, a method of cooking. And you want the pieces to be pretty uniform so they cook evenly, but it's also as the air in the oven circulates, it's going to dry off the moisture on top of the food. And when the top of the food gets to be about the same surface as the oven temperature, you start to get that caramelization. The sugars, the natural sugars in the food start to brown, and it's that yummy thing we love about roasting vegetables that you can't get with a wet cooking like steam or boiling. So one of the things, like people, the oil or no oil camp, a lot of people are dead set against it. Other people are starting to, like either they've never had a problem with it or starting to look at some of the more recent literature where other doctors just aren't as concerned about it, but not using a lot of it. So what the oil does, it kind of makes the food heat a little, cook a little evener. It makes it come up to that temperature. Like I was telling you, when it gets to the surface temperature and starts browning, it gets there faster. It also creates a barrier between the food, like keeps the moisture into the food. So I thought I wanted you to just see, I did a little experiment. You can see that. I did a dry, totally dry roast on one side, this side. And then I just spritzed after watching the Sure's Eyes. I don't know if you saw them this summer with their new book, just using a little spritz of an avocado spray. So it's not pouring oil on, it's just a little tiny spritz. And you can see a difference, right? You can see that this is a lighter green. This is darker, it's got more of the caramelization. And on the other side, it's not as bad. I mean, there's not as much of a difference, but you're going to get more caramelization with that little tiny spritz of oil that a lot of doctors still are okay with the spritz. I use on this side, I use the avocado spray from Trader Joe's and just 1 or 2 short sprays. I had to really work to cover the surfaces with that little bit. So it wasn't very much. And that's just so you can get an idea of what they look like. Okay. I have pomegranate, which I love. I just love the colors in this salad. It's, got jewel colors, the green from the Brussels sprouts, orange from the squash, and the pomegranate, just nice jewel tones. So I wanted to give you a little tip for cutting these. If you want to cut and do it yourself, there's, you want to get one that's kind of got these flat ridges, not shaped like a ball, but flat. You make a cut around the top and you take that cap off. And then you're going to make cuts down on the ridges because that's where the membranes are. So I'll show you. Pomegranate's really good. It's a superfood, but it's horrible if you get it on your clothes. So you never want to wear anything that you want to be seen in public again. So what I did with this one is I made those cuts, and you take the cap off, and then you pull down those, you score it. So you don't go all the way down, you score it, and then you turn it upside down and they come out. Works pretty nice. You can see the section. So they still, you have a wayward one that jumps the bowl and might stain you, but to me, this has been the neatest way I have found to cut them, to peel them. And those, what people call seeds, are actually arils, and the seeds are inside them. And it really gives a nice bit of color and texture. It's got a nice crunch, and I really enjoy that flavor. Now, the other thing, I have quinoa. I've got, it says 2/3 dry quinoa, which works out to about 2 cups of cooked. So I just did that in my Instant Pot. I have to go. You can do it on the stove top, you can do it in the Instant Pot. And if you're just, pressed for time or just don't want to, they make frozen quinoa a lot of places. Trader Joe's has it. Whole Foods has it. Those are the places I go the most. So I haven't checked the other stores, but more and more stores are having brown rice and quinoa in the freezer section. So that's good. And then, but I also want to show you the difference in cost to go back to those pomegranates. This is from one pomegranate. And this is if you want to buy them already peeled. So it's like twice the price and half the amount. So there's that. So I'm going to put, and then I have pecans. I like to do it. This is optional to put the spice on it, but I think it's nice. It adds a little heat. So I've got a cup of pecans. There are 3 different ways you can say it, all acceptable. And then a little bit of heat, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And then a little tiny bit of salt if you'd like. And then mix it to coat evenly. And put it in a preheated oven at 350 degrees for about 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 minutes. It depends on your oven. That's something else I wanted to say. Your oven can vary like 50 degrees. So it can be as much as 50 degrees off what it reads on the stovetop. So investing in a oven safe thermometer and get an idea if your oven's reading properly, that can really help with the results of your food. So I did crisp these up. They're very good. I got the, oh, that's good for my son. And this is all that's left of that batch. Okay. And then I'll put the whole squash in. And I'm going to put this in. I would not mix it like this at home, you know, but just put the glass in the box. And if you wanted to, you could cut the Brussels up into smaller pieces. You can also get, they're a little easier too, frozen. So they cook up, you put like the frozen vegetables, you usually, if you're roasting them, you're going to pop them right into the oven from frozen. These are $1 at Trader Joe's. They're not going to get as crispy because they're already cooked. They're going to have a softer texture, but they work. And if you're just trying to save some time and effort, then that's a nice way to go. And then the dressing is very simple. I tend to like more of the orange juice in there. So I use the 1/4 and the 1/2 cup. And balsamic, that's all there is to the dressing. Just whisk it up and pour it over here. And mix it up. So if you're pressed for time using those frozen ingredients or they're already peeled, pomegranates, those are great time savers. I don't use the word cheating or being lazy, because I think if we're pressed for time or have other commitments, that still making time for good whole foods is not something that we need to say is cheating or lazy. I think it's a great thing. So that's what the salad looks like. You get a look at that, nice and colorful, a lot of textures, just a lot of benefits, like what Vicki's making. These foods have just a ton of good properties, a lot of phytochemicals and things that really help us out. So that's that. And I want to take a little bit of time to tell you about some spices. So Olivia, did you put that in? Olivia was going to put the link to a chart I have. Okay, so this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It is just this from Ruby Culinary Program. It has herbs, spices, and aromatics at the top, produce, and then beans and grains used by different cultures. And it's like I said, it's not exhaustive. It doesn't have cayenne, for instance, but it gives you a nice idea of what goes well together. If you like want Mexican food, you can see what kind of produce and seasonings to use. I just think this is really nice. I also want to say about with spices, probably it's a good idea to go through your spice cabinet. I know I did that with my mom one time. It was about 2017, and I went through her cabinet, like she's got a ton of them, and I saw some jars that had a Farmer Jack price tag on them, and Farmer Jack went out of business in 2007. So 10 years is a lot to expect, a seasoning to hold up. So getting fewer, probably getting smaller containers so you go through them. The ones you use the most are going to lose their flavor faster because when they're exposed to light and heat, it loses the flavor. And then keeping them in a cool, dry place. So I see a lot of people who have their spices over the stove. That's going to be a lot of heat, and that's going to shorten their lifespan. So certain seasonings, like the wholes, if you get a whole nutmeg or cinnamon stick, that's going to last. That could last a few years. Things like, ground cinnamon, ground black pepper, those maybe are good for a few months. And again, it depends on how often you use them. So just, you don't have to go out and get a whole lot of things. You can look at the cuisines that maybe you like the most and see what's in all of them. Like chili is used in a lot of them, cumin's used in a lot. So you just get an idea that way. And like you said, you can get, small jars. I do like the small jars. It's also, if you're just starting out, getting some spice blends are really handy, like Italian seasoning. And these all have very potent, they're very good, like antioxidant, antimicrobial. They have a lot of wonderful properties. So I like having an Italian seasoning blend, a pumpkin or apple spice, and a curry. Those are 3 blends that I tend to use the most. It's also nice, like if you ever go to use fresh garlic and there's a sprout coming out, it's kind of last minute, having the garlic powder on hand. It's about 1/8 of a teaspoon of garlic powder per clove. So that's something that if you run out or your garlic looks a little wonky, that's good. And then the oregano, like these things with just to go back, the difference between herbs and spices, the herbs are from the leafy part. So oregano is an herb, or cilantro is an herb. But if you go to the seed for cilantro, that's coriander, that's a spice. So it's usually the difference is the leaves are herbs and then the spices are the seeds, the root, the stalk, that kind of thing. So these are the things I use. Turmeric a lot. I use cayenne a lot. I try not to use a lot of salt, and cayenne is a flavor enhancer. You just want to go really easy with it because you can always add more. You cannot take it back out, and that gets pretty hot pretty fast. So I think salt is something, there are different kinds of salt. Seasoning at the end is good. I mean, certain things you want to season before, but just so if you're trying to use less salt, seasoning at the end, like with the finishing salt, so you can get the flavor on the top, but you're not getting as much sodium as you would if you mix it all into the whole dish. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a start with spices. Is there something else? And I will send it back to Vicki.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the next thing I'm making is what I call a raw, fresh cranberry sauce. And cranberries are such a fantastic superfood, full of all kinds of wonderful properties that, all kinds of antioxidants. And it's actually, cranberries are one of those foods that actually, it's very high in vitamin C. It is associated with longer life. It's rich in all the kinds of antioxidants that help us prevent cancer, reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, lower cholesterol, all kinds of great things. And lots of people are kind of used to having dried cranberries, but not so much fresh, unless they're using it in a cranberry sauce where there's a ton of sugar. And so this thing that I'm making today is actually not cooked at all. It's just raw and sweetened with other fruits. So what I'm doing here into the food processor is starting with a bag of fresh cranberries. I've actually already put in 1 apple, and I'm going to put in 1 more, and I'll show you what I do with that. So I took a 12-ounce bag of cranberries and I sorted them and made sure that they all looked nice and firm, and I rinsed them, dried them, and those are going into the food processor now. And then 2 apples. I just put 1 in. The second one I'm just going to cut up right now and just show you. You can just peel it. I'm taking a little bit of a shortcut even with that, and just using a little knife to, kind of remove the extra skin. You don't even need to remove the skin. I've made it both ways, but over, the many times that I've made this, I have found that we tend to like it a little bit more when we take the skin off. But, I like it both ways, honestly. And so you can save time if you're not in the mood to remove your skin, just leave it on, especially if it's organic. And so we're just pulling that skin off, and then taking some big chops to, and I even have left a little bit of the skin, no big deal. And I'm just taking some big chunks of the apple to leave the core behind. And it looks like I've got every bit of the apple that we can kind of easily grab here. Throw that into the food processor, remove the core, and then the same kind of shortcuts I'm taking with the orange. You could peel it by hand. Michele will remember that I one time made this very recipe for 100 samples, and I just kind of got into this mood when I make this now of doing the same thing as though I were making it for 100 people, and that is to just use a knife to just peel away the skin like this. So you don't need to, you can kind of be a little more careful, but I'm just basically taking a shortcut with this step. And from here, I'm just chopping it into 3 or 4 pieces, throwing this whole orange into the food processor as well. And then adding just a little bit of dates. So we've got 2/3 of a cup of dates. These are already pitted. You can use any kind of date you like. And now we're going to give it a whirl. I'm going to pulse it to kind of get you can make it as chunky again as you like, or kind of grind it up quite fine. We're done. That's how fast this is. And this is really lovely for, holidays or just fall. And it's really good on its own. I'll show you here how we can plate this. Just going to pour this all into this large bowl, and you could serve it just like this. And it's really delicious enough and sweet enough that you could just serve this in a dessert dish like this, or, after a nice fall meal of these lovely foods we're showing, or whatever you're making at home, and just serve it just like this. And what's nice about this is, with all this orange in here, it helps to keep the oxidizing of the apples down so that it stays nice and colorful like this for a few days even. And it's really delicious in other ways as well. So if you have some left over the next day, it's lovely on top of your oatmeal in the morning. It's really delicious with a non-dairy ice cream or a nice cream, just some frozen bananas. I've even reduced this the next day in a blender into kind of a slushy texture and frozen them as popsicles, and those are really good too. So it's just really delicious, and it's one of my favorites. So hope you like it too. Michele?
Yes, I remember very well. I was the one helping make that with her for the 100+ people. It's delicious. I made it for my family. We have that at Thanksgiving too. I also, that dish that I made, we have at Thanksgiving. So next thing I'm making is a caramel sauce. And I love this. I just found like the more I transition to whole food, plant-based lifestyle, the less tolerance I have for sugar. I just don't feel good after it. I don't think I ever really did, but I kept trying. So now I realize that I prefer things that have whole food sweeteners such as dates. I love to have these. So I am making this sauce. It is just very simple. You're just going to soak the dates and the cashews. I'm going to drain these now. Just put them in. This does a lot better with a high-speed blender. It really does. It's going to be smoother, but if you don't have one, you can just keep soaking things longer. I do have the dates. I like to wash mine off, then rub them off with a towel. I always check. I really advise checking the inside of the date before you bite into it or use it, because sometimes every once in a while, and if it's ever happened once, you're not going to want it to happen again. There can be some mold or these black seedy things inside, and it tastes terrible. So I always look, and then I save, because I mean, after you go to the whole food sweeteners, maple syrup is one of the better choices next, but I try to use as much of the dates as I can. So I save. The reason I like to wash the dates is because I do like to save the soaking water to use for my liquid. So it's got nice sugar, a nice sweetness into that. And then I have the maple syrup and a little bit of half teaspoon of vanilla. It's that simple. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to make some noise. I'm going to scrape down the sides. I always like to caution people, if you're going to use the tamper, make sure you have the lid on and you've just taken the top off, and that you keep moving it up and down, because if you don't move it up and down, it can explode, which happened to me once. Vitamix would replace it one time, but it's not fun because you get little black plastic shards all into whatever you were making. So I'm going to run this a little bit longer. Dates have a nice caramely taste to them anyway, so it works really well for this. You see, it's nice and thick. I'm just not going to empty all that, but this is really good for dipping apples, for putting on, just like what Vicki was saying, nice non-dairy ice cream or nice cream, apples, putting a little bit on, oatmeal. My mom likes it on her popcorn, and I've seen people eat it out of the refrigerator with a spoon, so that's another option. But it's very, very nice, very simple, and I feel good after I have this versus having something with sugar. So that's all there is to that. It lasts about 7 days in the refrigerator. and it's quite yummy. I wish we could have everybody try everything we've made.
First of all, thank you so much. All of that looks incredibly delicious. Michele, that was a great tip with the pomegranate. I actually have a pomegranate at home, and after this, I'm going to go try and cut it that way. I've
But
never really known the best way to do it yet. So
I saw a video with Jamie Oliver, and he did one with a white shirt on. I thought, what a bold move.
wow.
A lot of white shirts, but think like the more attached you are to what you're wearing, the greater the spray from the pomegranate. So usually I do it in a deeper bowl too, but I didn't have a good one that you could see into. So I like that. And I didn't want to do it during class because I would have sprayed myself too. So
Absolutely.
Murphy's
Completely
Law,
understandable.
I like to stick to that whenever possible. So
Absolutely. All right. So we only have one question so far from Noelle for you, Vicki. She says, do you need a food processor for the cranberry recipe, or does a regular blender or Vitamix work?
That's a great question. And I think a regular blender would be just fine. There's nothing that is really too difficult to chop. So yeah, I think you could definitely use a variety of tools, whatever works best. I mean, you could even do hand chopping. It would just take a little more work, or a mezzaluna or something. But, you know, a food processor or something that's got a nice blade to it's going to do most of the work for you. And I think a blender would be just fine. Just have to kind of make sure that things were flipping around enough that you felt that the chopping was a nice even cut.
Sure, absolutely. That makes sense. And that sounds so good about pureeing it and turning it into popsicles. That's a great idea. I love the versatility of it.
it's
Excellent.
really right.
Let me see. There's one more question, but first, there are also so many great comments. Pamela is saying great recipes. She really wants to make them. That's great, Pamela. That's what we want. Raquel is saying thank you. This is so wonderful. Jenna says everything looks delicious. It does. Hopefully, Jenna, one day we can have them actually cook for us in person. That is the goal, to try some of this food. Okay, one more question. Laura says, any ideas what to serve the butternut squash soup with? Do you have any recommendations, Vicki?
So, you know, that is really nice with whatever you like. So you can serve it with, you know, a warm bread, or, you know, loaf of warm bread, or toasted Ezekiel muffins or something like that, or just with a fresh green salad. And if you want to make it, you know, kind of heartier with a grain in it, you can actually do something like a brown rice or a quinoa. It would be delicious with the salad that Michele made. I mean, that combination of this, you know, a warm soup with her delicious salad with all those colors and vegetables and crunches, it'd be a nice contrast because the soup is quite smooth, and it'd be nice with something with a little crunch to it. So something like that, I think, would be nice, either, you know, a toasted kind of bread, or Michele's salad, or maybe just, you know, a scoop of rice or something like that in the bowl.
Absolutely. All excellent suggestions. Let me see. Sue, you said you're new here. Is this a regular Zoom event? Not this exactly, but something very similar. We're definitely trying to do at least one cooking demo a month, and they are open to everyone. If you are interested in keeping up to date with the events VegMichigan has, I'm putting the link to our event calendar in the chat. And also we post all of our events in our meetup groups. There are 4 different VegMichigan meetup groups, so you can join the one that's in your area. It's really easy to search, just VegMichigan on meetup.com. And definitely, yeah, just join us and keep an eye on that, because there definitely will be more cooking demos coming up. All right, let me see. Okay, Carol says, what could you use in place of an orange in the cranberry sauce? Do you have any recommendations for replacements if someone maybe doesn't like oranges, or any other reason?
So, you know, you could, if you don't like the flavor of orange, but you do like citrus, then you could try something else, maybe, you know, a tangerine, or something like a grapefruit, even maybe with a little more dates. But if you're avoiding the citrus for one reason or another, then, you know, just leave it out. You could definitely swap in more apples, or a different fruit, maybe pineapple or mango or something like that, even frozen. So it's kind of flexible. The idea, the orange adds a little tang along with the cranberries, which are kind of tart. And then you've got the sweeter fruits, the dates and the apples. So you could kind of combine whatever flavors you like. Could experiment for sure.
Absolutely, sounds good. Let me see. Okay, Raquel's just asking what city VegFest is in. She is in Madison, Wisconsin. Hello from hello to Madison. Hello to Raquel.
Thanks.
Great to have you here. So VegFest is going to be in Detroit, and it's going to be at the TCF Center in the beautiful Grand Ballroom. We're really excited to move it to Detroit next year, and it's going to be on April 24th, which is a Sunday. And I'm adding the link to the chat as well, just to the VegFest page on our website with a bit more info, no vendor info or anything like that yet, as it is still a ways away, but it is going to be a great event. We always, they're going to be like 100+ vendors there and great speakers and just a really beautiful location. So hopefully you can make the road trip. We would love to see you. Let me see. Oh, another question about the cranberry sauce. If you don't use the orange, do you have another tip of what to use to keep the apples from browning?
Well, that's a great question. And that's part of what the citrus does, is help to do that. I don't have another idea of what would help it not brown. Michele, do you?
Everything I can think of, I use citrus.
Yeah, me too. I use citrus as well. So I can't think of something that would do that. I mean, you could do a squeeze of lime maybe if you wanted a little, but again, if you're avoiding citrus entirely, nothing comes to mind. You may experience some of the browning. The other thing you could do is add something that would kind of mask it a little, like blueberries or something like that, so that it's not as,
perhaps,
you know. Yeah, you could definitely, I was thinking of like a balsamic or a flavored balsamic, a fruity balsamic. It would definitely change the flavor compared to what just fruit juice does, but, or just the fruit, but it would, might be nice. Maybe pineapple. I'm thinking maybe the acid from the pineapple. What do you think, Michele?
I just was thinking pineapple, so.
That sounds good.
That's about all I can think of. Yeah.
Definitely very nice. And then, I mean, it looks so good. You might get done eating it before it even starts browning anyway. Or blend it up into a popsicle, put it in the freezer, and it's not going to brown like that either. So lots of ways to get around that.
Yes.
All right, just another comment from Jody, just saying thank you to both of you. Grateful to VegMichigan. Thank you so much, Jody. Thanks for being with us. Any other questions? It's getting close to 8, but we still have some time if anyone has anything else. In the meantime, I will let you know, if you haven't noticed already, this is being recorded and it's going to be up on the VegMichigan YouTube channel, I'd say within the week. So definitely I recommend following us on YouTube, but if you want to make sure you don't forget, you are welcome to send me an email. I am putting my email in the chat right now. You're welcome to send me an email. Just say you'd like the recording, the link to the recording for tonight. And once it's on YouTube, I would be happy to send you the link so you can check that out. Let me see. Oh, there is one more question. Elizabeth is asking, I think just both of you, what are you making for Thanksgiving? Do you have any plans for what you're going to be making this year?
Well, this is what I'm going to start with. These two things that I made today, and we'll definitely have the soup, and that'll be a starter, and the cranberry sauce will be one of the finishes. And in between, I'm going to make a lentil shepherd's pie that has mashed potatoes on top and lentils and vegetables inside, and lots of different kinds of vegetables. I like to make a roasted, whole pan or more of different kinds of roasted vegetables, Brussels sprouts, and different kinds of things. So yes, and a stuffing. I'm going to make a bread stuffing with potatoes and herbs and a salad, and those are maybe something chocolate at the end. So those are the kinds of things I'm going to have. How about you, Michele?
Well, I also have your relish. We used to go to Williamsburg a lot when I was younger, and they had this cream of peanut soup that everybody loved. Okay, I'm allergic to peanuts and I don't eat dairy, so a few substitutions, but I make a different version of that. It's a nice soup to start. We like a lentil loaf for Thanksgiving. A lot of people don't like the word loaf. It brings back childhood unpleasant experiences with meatloaf, but it's just the pan. So it's not a bad thing. I really like that. Mashed potatoes, a lot of roasted. I use my salad too. That we really like that. I love the jewel colors at the holidays. A lot of vegetables, a stuffing. And I make a pumpkin, all vegan, of course, cheesecake for dessert. Thank you. A lot of vegetables. So.
Wow, that all sounds so good as well. Awesome. I love the lentil theme as well. Lentils are so great and so versatile, so packed with protein. Love it. Let me see. Yeah, lots of other people are saying that sounds so good as well. They're gonna be showing up at your guys' houses for Thanksgiving. Yeah, I think that's all of the questions, but more comments, saying, yep, Angie says, would love to be at your homes for Thanksgiving. Carol says, great presentations. Looking forward to more. Let me see. Oh, there's one more question from Perry saying, do you use something other than milk and butter in your mashed potatoes, or any tips on making a creamy mashed potato without milk and butter?
Yeah, I'd love to do, I'm sure Michele does something similar. I would love to do that sometime for this group. In fact, I use my Instant Pot, my electric pressure cooker, to make my potatoes, and I mash it in the water that it's cooking in and add to that some soy milk, and I add salt and pepper, sometimes a little onion powder, sometimes mustard, sometimes roasted garlic, and you would think there was butter in there. It's just always nice and creamy and fluffy and absolutely delicious. So it's a family favorite, and I make like 5 pounds of it at a time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have Vicki and I did a class where she made that, and I just remember how many pounds of potatoes you had to peel and all that. It was a lot of work. You do it too. You really don't need the butter. You get used to it. It's not necessary. But I do that too with a little non-dairy milk. And I'm just going to caution people to read the box. So you make sure you don't get vanilla, because that's not going to be a pleasant taste. So just doing that, and garlic, and we go through a lot of mashed potatoes like that too.
I love it. Great tips. And yeah, great tip of not getting vanilla. Oftentimes you can think you're just getting the original and it's vanilla. And yeah, that is great in many situations, but definitely not all.
Somebody else did that, and it's like they're trying to
Yeah.
It's like that episode of Friends where Rachel made the trifle. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, we are almost at 8. Just lots of comments saying thank you, saying how wonderful it was. It really was so great. And yeah, that's it for the night. So thank you so much again to Vicki and Michele for being with us tonight. Just so wonderful. Definitely going to make some of that for myself, and I'm sure many other people will as well.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
Yes, my pleasure too. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we will have you back again very soon. All right.
See you soon.
Have a wonderful night, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Bye.